For 25 years, they called me their daughter. In reality, they treated me like their maid. What they never saw coming was that a cheap DNA test I took for a laugh would not only blow up their darkest secret but cost them everything. And it all went down at my father's 60th birthday party. For years, I was their shadow, their servant, and their favorite scapegoat. I cooked, I cleaned, I served, all while my perfect younger sister, Serena, got paraded around like she was royalty. They'd say, "But your family," yet everything they did screamed that I was a burden, a worthless mistake. They were so busy admiring their own perfect lives and their perfect family that they never imagined their entire world was built on a lie that was about to go nuclear, and I was holding the detonator. Stick with me, and I'll tell you exactly how a little bit of spit in a plastic tube brought down a house of cards that had stood for over 2 decades. And you have to understand, this wasn't some new development. This was my entire life. From my very first memories, my job in the family was painfully clear. I was the help. My sister Serena was the heir. She was 2 years younger than me, but in their eyes, she was the sun. I was just some random planet stuck in her orbit, there to cater to her needs. Our house was gorgeous, don't get me wrong. A big 2-story colonial in a perfect suburb, the kind of place people slow down to stare at. My father was a successful architect, and my mother was a big deal in local charities. They were obsessed with keeping up that perfect family image, but behind the designer front door, the reality was a lot different. For me, anyway. My days started before the sun came up. While Serena slept in, I'd be downstairs by 6 a.m., dealing with last night's dishes, wiping down countertops until I could see my reflection, and getting the coffee going so the smell would hit the staircase just as my father made his grand entrance. My mother would leave me little lists on the kitchen island. Clean guest bathroom, Polish silver, iron father's shirts. They weren't suggestions, they were marching orders. I never got an allowance. My reward, they'd say with a straight face, was having a roof over my head. Serena's mornings? A complete joke in comparison. She'd float downstairs around 9, wearing some new outfit my mother just bought her. She'd grab a yogurt, leave the empty container on the counter for me to throw away, and then announce her plans brunch with her friends, a shopping spree, tennis at the club. Chores? Not for Serena. Serena needs to focus on her social development, my mother would say. It's vital for her future. My future, I guess, was in housekeeping. I remember for my 16th birthday, I actually let myself hope for something special. Maybe a small party? Or that used car my father promised he'd help me with if I kept my grades up. I had straight A's. Serena was barely scraping by with C's, but she got a brand new convertible for her 16th. What did I get? I woke up to the longest chore list I'd ever seen. My mother had decided, at the last minute, to host a garden party for her charity committee. My entire birthday was spent setting up tables, arranging flowers, and passing around appetizers. When I worked up the nerve to ask about, my birthday, my mother just waved her hand. "We'll celebrate you another time, honey. This is important." They never did. I ate a piece of leftover cake by myself in the kitchen that night while they counted the party's donation checks. It wasn't just the work, it was the constant, soul-crushing feeling of being worthless. If something in the house broke, it was my fault. You must have been careless while cleaning. If Serena was in a mood, it was because I'd done something to upset her. I was the built-in excuse for everything that went wrong. My father was quieter about it, but somehow worse. His disappointment was like this heavy blanket he'd just throw over me with a sigh or a shake of his head. "Honestly, can't you do one thing right?" was his favorite. He never, ever looked at me the way he looked at Serena. With her, his eyes were soft with pride. With me, they were always sharp, critical, just looking for my next screw-up. Holidays were the absolute worst. They were just these huge, elaborate stage plays where I was the unpaid stagehand. I'd spend days cooking for 30 people, only to be told to check on dessert, right as everyone sat down to eat. I was introduced with a casual, "Oh, and this is Amelia," like I was a distant cousin who just happened to be there. I'd watch my father give these glowing toasts to Serena for winning a local tennis match or something equally meaningless. I won a statewide academic scholarship, and they forgot to even mention it. It really messed with my head. For years, I actually believed them. I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that I was just less than Serena. Their voice became my inner voice. I learned to make myself small, to be invisible unless somebody needed something. My room was a converted storage space in the attic, while Serena had this huge suite with her own bathroom. They said it was because I liked my privacy. Right. It was to keep me out of sight and out of mind. And the way they framed it was the most twisted part. They'd call it building character. Hard work is good for you, Amelia, my mother would say with this fake, sweet smile. It wasn't about my character. It was about breaking my spirit. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an unpaid subordinate. They needed someone to soak up all the work and all the blame so that their precious Serena could shine. I did try to push back a few times. When I was 18, I told them I wanted to go to a university out of state for journalism. My mother literally scoffed. Journalism? Don't be ridiculous. You'll go to the local community college. We need you. Here, my father just said, it's settled. End of discussion. So I went, watching my dreams of escaping just shrivel up and die. I'd go to class in the morning and rush home to start my chore list. It felt like a prison with invisible bars. As we got older, the difference between me and Serena became a slap in the face. She went to a fancy private university, the one I wanted to go to. They paid for everything: her tuition, sorority fees, spring break in Europe. I worked part-time at the library to pay for my own textbook. They saw my struggle as just another one of my personal failings, while Serena's effortless life was proof of their amazing parenting. It was this crazy, twisted logic I couldn't escape. I was drowning, and the two people who were supposed to be my lifeguards were holding my head under the water, telling me it was for my own good. The thing that blew up my entire world didn't start with some big dramatic moment. It started with a laugh, a 50% off coupon, and a boring Tuesday afternoon. I was at my part-time library job, shelving books, when my friend Chloe starts going on and on about this DNA ancestry kit she'd just ordered. There was a huge sale happening. Maybe I'm secretly descended from Viking royalty, she joked. Or I'll find a lost cousin in Italy. I kind of half smiled. Ancestry was a weird topic for me. My so-called family wasn't big on history. My father's side was supposedly from some stuffy English aristocrat, but it was all part of their grand story, a story I wasn't really in. Chloe nudged me. You should do it too. It's super cheap right now. We could compare results. My first instinct was to say no. That's silly. I know where I come from. Half stuffy English people, half whatever my mom is. Her background was always fuzzy. Something about hard-working German immigrants. They were never big on details, but Chloe kept pushing. Come on, live a little. What's the harm? It's just for fun. And that's all it was supposed to be. Just for fun. It felt like this tiny act of rebellion, a $50 purchase that was all mine, for my own curiosity. A secret little treat. So that night, I went online, used Chloe's promo code, and ordered the kit. It showed up a week later in a plain little box. I remember sitting in my attic room, just looking at the vial. It was so simple. Spit in the tube, seal it, mail it back. I almost chickened out. That old wave of guilt washed over me. $50 could have gone toward textbooks. It felt selfish. But then, a stubborn little voice pushed back. I work hard. I deserve one stupid $50 thing for myself. So I did it. I spit in the tube, sealed it up, and dropped it in a mailbox the next day. And then, I honestly forgot all about it. Life went on. I was drowning in finals week, working extra shift, and at home, things were getting even more insane. My mother was planning this massive 60th birthday party for my father, and the house was a total pressure. Tween cooker. The guest list was huge. Caterers and florists were constantly underfoot, and I was somehow expected to manage all of it on top of everything else. I felt like a ghost running on fumes. The DNA test was the last thing on my mind. 6 weeks went by. The party was just 2 weeks away, and the stress was unbearable. I was barely sleeping, and that's when the email came. I was on a rare 5-minute break at work when the subject line popped up on my phone. Your ancestry DNA results are in. My first thought was just a faint flicker of curiosity, which was immediately smothered by pure exhaustion. I almost just deleted it, but then I remembered Chloe and her Viking royalty joke. I figured I'd take a quick peek. I logged in, Clicked on the DNA story, and a colorful pie chart loaded. I just stared at it. 50 Irish, 25 Italian, and 25 a mix of other Western European stuff. Italian? I actually laughed out loud, but it was a confused, hollow sound. This had to be a mistake. My father was obsessed with his pure English bloodline. My mother was supposedly German. Where in the world did Irish and Italian come from? I went over to Chloe's desk. Check this out. They must have messed up my sample. It says I'm half Irish and part Italian. Chloe leaned in. Whoa, that's wild. Maybe there's a secret Italian lover in your family tree. She laughed. I logged out, trying to brush it off. Lab error. Simple, but the thought stuck in my head like a splinter. That night, after I was done scrubbing the kitchen floor on my hands and knees, I went up to my room and logged back in. This time, I clicked on the DNA Matches tab. This is where they connect you with people in the database who share your DNA. The page loaded, and right at the top, under the category Close Family, was a name I had never seen before, Mateo Garcia. And right under his name, it said, Predicted relationship, first cousin. My blood ran cold. First cousin? I didn't have a cousin named Mateo. My father was an only child, and my mother had one sister whose daughters were named Jessica and Emily. There was no Mateo. My hands started to shake. I knew that while ethnicity estimates can be broad, a close family DNA match is over 99.9 accurate. This wasn't a lab error. This was a scientific fact. For a minute, I just sat there, frozen, my mind scrambling for any explanation that made sense. I clicked on Mateo's profile. He had a public family tree. My heart was pounding. I scanned the names. His mother was Sofia Garcia. His father was Ricardo Garcia. I scrolled further back, looking at his grandparents, and then I saw it. Ricardo had a brother named Julian Garcia. The room started to spin. I knew that name. Julian Garcia. He was a landscape designer my mother hired 26 years ago. He worked on our garden for an entire summer when I was a baby. I had this vague memory of a handsome man with dark hair and a warm smile, but mostly, I remembered how my mother used to talk about him, with this strange mix of admiration and something else. It was like a lightning bolt. The coldness, the distance, the feeling that I never belonged. It all crashed down on me with one horrifying realization. They weren't my parents. The people who raised me, who treated me like garbage, were not my parents. I wasn't the black sheep of the family. I was from a completely different flock. The pain, the neglect, the lonely birthdays, it wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. They didn't treat me like a daughter because I wasn't one. I was their dirty secret, a living, breathing reminder of a betrayal they had buried for 25 years. Slowly, the shock turned into anger, a hot, white-hot rage. Anger at my mother for her lies, anger at the man I called my father for his cruelty if he knew, or his willful ignorance if he didn't. I had to be sure. With trembling hands, I wrote a message to Mateo Garcia. Hi, Mateo. My name is Amelia. We matched as first cousins on Ancestry, and I'm trying to figure out the connection. Would you be willing to talk? I hit send. The wait was torture. I went through the motions for the next 3 days in a complete fog. Then, my phone buzzed. A reply from Mateo. Hi, Amelia. Wow, a new cousin. I showed your message to my dad and my uncle Julian. The name of your town rang a bell for my uncle. He said he worked there a long time ago. He'd love to talk to you. He said to tell you he remembers your mother, and he has always wondered about you. He always wondered about me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. He knew. He'd always known I might exist, and she had kept me from him. Mateo sent his uncle's phone number. I stared at it for a full day. Making that call felt like jumping off a cliff. There would be no going back, but I deserved the truth. Taking a deep breath, I walked to a nearby park and dialed. A man with a warm voice answered. Hello? Is this Julian Garcia? I whispered. There was a pause. Then, yes. Is this Amelia? I breathed. He was quiet for a second, and then I heard him take a shaky breath. I've been waiting for this call for 25 years. Before I tell you what happened next, how I walked into that party with a bomb of a secret, and how I finally confronted the people who lied to me my entire life, do me a quick favor. If you believe that the truth is always worth fighting for, hit that like button and subscribe. It really means the world. Now let's get back to the party. The day of Robert's 60th birthday party came. My conversation with Julian had changed everything. He told me the whole story. He and my mother, Eleanor, had a passionate affair the summer he worked on their garden. When it ended, she found out she was pregnant. She told him she was going to leave Robert for him, but she chickened out. A divorce would have destroyed her social standing. So, she passed me off as Robert's baby. Julian, heartbroken, eventually moved on, but he set apart. Of him had always wondered about me. Armed with that truth, a cold, hard resolve replaced the fear I'd lived with my entire life. I spent the day on autopilot, perfecting every detail of the party, but I wasn't doing it for them. I was setting their stage, the perfect backdrop for the final act of their perfect life. I chose a simple black dress, not the frilly thing my mother wanted me to wear. It was my armor. When I came downstairs, Eleanor looked me up and down. "Is that what you're wearing? You look like you're going to a funeral." "Perhaps I am," I said quietly. The comment went right over her head. The guests arrived, 100 smiling faces from their elite circle, all fawning over the decorations, the food, over Eleanor and Robert. Serena, in a glittering gold dress, was in her element. I stood by the kitchen watching. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like a spectator at a play, and I already knew the ending. Around 9, Robert stood to give a speech, a picture of success. Eleanor was beaming at his side. "Thank you all for coming," he boomed, looking around this room, at my friends, my beautiful wife, Eleanor, my wonderful daughters. I am the luckiest man alive. Family is everything. It's the foundation of our lives. He raised his glass. To family, the room applauded. To family, this was it. I stepped out from the shadows, grabbing a champagne flute from a tray. The room quieted, surprised. I never sought the spotlight. "I'd like to make a toast, too," I said, my voice ringing out, clear and steady. Robert and Eleanor exchanged an annoyed look. Serena just looked horrified. I raised my glass. To family. And to secret. Because it turns out, some families aren't built on love. They're built on secrets. A nervous murmur went through the room. I looked right at Eleanor. Her smile was frozen, her eyes wide with panic. "For 25 years you told me I was your daughter, and you treated me like a servant, a failure. I spent my whole life thinking something was wrong with me." I took a step closer. "But I finally know the truth. I know why you could never love me like a daughter. It's because I'm not one." A collective gasp. Robert looked baffled. "Amelia, what is this? Have you been drinking?" "I'm sober," I said, my voice like ice. "But I am enlightened. A few weeks ago I took a DNA test, just for fun." I let that hang in the air. It came back with some interesting results. For instance, I am 50% Irish and 25% Italian. Funny, isn't it? Considering your perfect English bloodline, Robert. His face went white. He shot a look at Eleanor, pure horror dawning in his eyes. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "Stop this! You're making a scene!" she hissed. I yanked my arm away. "A scene? We are way past a scene. This is a reckoning." I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket, a printout of my DNA match. The test connected me to a first cousin, and through him it connected me to my real father. I looked at all the shocked faces, then back at Eleanor. "Do you remember Julian Garcia, Mother? The landscape designer you hired 26 years ago?" He says hello, and he says he's been waiting a very long time to meet his daughter. The name hung in the air like a death sentence. Eleanor let out a strangled cry. Robert looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He stared at his wife, his face twisting with betrayal and a rage so deep it was terrifying. "What did she say?" he whispered. Serena rushed to her mother. "You're lying. You're just trying to ruin Daddy's birthday," she shrieked at me. "Am I?" I asked calmly. "Ask her. Ask your mother why I look nothing like you. Ask her why she kept me in the attic. Ask her why she flinched every time Robert called me his daughter." All eyes went to Eleanor, who was sobbing, shaking her head, but her face said it all. Robert staggered toward her. "Eleanor, tell me she's lying." She just crumpled. And in that moment, everyone knew. The lie was out. The foundation Robert had just toasted to had just crumbled into dust. He let out a raw scream of pain and fury, a sound I will never forget, before clutching his chest and collapsing. The party ended in pure chaos. As Robert gasped on the floor, someone screamed and called 911. Eleanor was hysterical, but he pushed her away, his face a mask of revulsion. Serena just stood there, blank with shock, her perfect world imploding. I didn't stay. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt empty. I turned, walked through the stunned crowd out the front door, and didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I was completely free and completely adrift. My phone started blowing up. Serena's texts were a storm of rage. How could you do this? You killed him. You ruined everything. Then came the relatives, calling me a liar, a monster. I just turned my phone off. I found out later from Chloe that Robert had a massive anxiety attack. He was released from the hospital but went to a hotel. He filed for divorce within the week. The scandal was the only thing anyone in town talked about. All their high society friends were now feasting on the ruins of their lives. Eleanor became a ghost. The charities she worked with asked for her resignation. Her friends stopped answering her calls. She was a prisoner in that big, beautiful house, trapped by the lies she'd tried so hard to protect. She left me rambling voicemails, sometimes furious, blaming me, sometimes pitiful, begging me to come home. I did it to protect you, she cried in one message. I wanted you to have a good life. I never answered. She hadn't given me a life, she'd given me a life sentence. Serena had a total meltdown. Her identity was gone. Robert, lost in his own pain, grew distant even with her. The river of money she was used to dried up. She had to get a job for the first time in her life. She called me once, screaming that I'd stolen her life. I told her that her life was built on my back, and the bill had finally come due. Then I blocked her number. While their world was collapsing, mine was just beginning. A week after the party, I drove to meet Julian. I was terrified. What if he was disappointed in me? I met him at a diner. I saw a man with kind eyes and the same dark hair as mine, now streaked with gray. He stood up, and his face broke into a smile so full of love and relief, it brought tears to my eyes. He just opened his arms, and I walked into them. It was the first real parental hug of my life. We talked for hours. He introduced me to my half-brothers, Mateo and Lucas, over video call. They were funny and warm and said they were excited to finally meet their what-if sister. There was no judgment, just open-armed acceptance. It felt like coming home. Julian showed me pictures of his late wife and told me about his life. He told me how much he regretted not fighting for me, how he had let Eleanor's fear scare him away. He asked for my forgiveness, and I gave it to him. How could I not? He was the first person who ever looked at me and saw a daughter. In the next few months, my life completely transformed. Julian helped me get an apartment near him. When I told him I wanted to be a journalist, he helped me transfer to a proper 4-year university, the kind of school I used to dream about, and insisted on paying my tuition. "Let me be a father to you now," he said, and I let him. I was finally living. I had a family that loved me, brothers who treated me like I'd always been there. The weight of not being good enough, a weight I'd carried for 25 years, was just gone. As for Robert and Eleanor, their divorce was messy and public. He sold the house and moved across the country, a bitter, broken man. He never tried to contact me. Eleanor lost most of her wealth and status. The last I heard, she was working as a receptionist. Serena struggled the most. Without her pedestal, she was lost. The irony is, the life of hard work they forced on me had prepared me for the real world, while the pampered life they gave Serena left her completely helpless. It has been 2 years. I'm about to graduate with honors, and I have a job lined up at a newspaper. I have a father who calls me every day. I have brothers who make me laugh until I cry. I found my family, the family I was supposed to have all along. Sometimes I think about that night. I don't regret it. Revealing a secret that big is like setting off a bomb. But sometimes you have to burn down a rotten building to let the sunlight in. My whole life, they kept me in the dark. Now, I am finally standing in the sun. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've had a life-changing experience with a DNA test, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories about truth, justice, and the crazy world of family drama. See you in the next one.